So, hey guys, it's such an honor to speak to you. So, why don't my actors tell me a little bit about their roles and how it all came to be?
Yeah, well, I guess we'll start. I'm Selena Ringel, and I'm the writer, producer, and the star. And
I'm Dan Levy Dagerman, the director, and I'm Selena's husband.
and we wrote this. Well, I wrote this based on a personal story we outlined together. And I can tell you a little bit about the personal story if you would like, but I want to give
Yes.
space to Ritesh as well.
Yes, I'm Ritesh Rajan and I play Ash. Uh, and I'll let Selena take the rest and tell the origins of our story here.
Oh. So basically, the whole story started with Dan and I went on a trip after we had our son. We went on a trip to Vegas, which was one of the first trips we had gone on without our son. And we went to a club, and I was hit on by this very beautiful woman who wanted to kiss me. And I realized that I was very curious to kiss her. And so I asked my husband, Dan, if that would be okay. And he was like, yeah, that would totally be okay. And I was like, all right. So we shared this very beautiful kiss. And then she asked for my phone number and was like, I would love to see you later. Is that okay? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Let me check. And so I asked Dan, and he was like, yeah, give her your phone number. So I gave her my phone number. And for the next 48 hours, we basically talked in Vegas about everything that was on the table, everything that wasn't on the table, what would make us feel safe. A lot of things kind of came up for us that we had never really discussed before. Long story short, she never texted me. But by the time we left Vegas, we were already outlining this movie.
Very nice. And Dan, tell me a little bit about the directing part of it, please.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a very unique project to direct because we're telling a story that's like a hyperbole of our lives. So Ritesh is playing a version of me, albeit a little more extreme, and we boosted the conflict of it. But so that made it a very interesting meta story for me to direct. But it was an amazing story because what we were setting out to do was tell the most authentic story about a relationship in the framework of a romantic comedy, and also like with inspirations from European films, if that makes sense.
Nice. And why don't you each tell me a little bit about the challenges of playing the role and directing respectively? Whoever wants to begin.
You want to start?
Do you want to start, Ritesh?
Yeah, sure, I'll start. So for my challenge, in terms of approaching Ash was figuring out a way to create a character that the audience would both feel for and probably fight against, finding the balance of rooting for him and being like, oh man, he's such an idiot, and like, it was a very sort of back and forth journey about how do I create this character that obviously has so much love and affection for his family, but is making these mistakes that he honestly, when he's just trying to do his best, and ultimately it comes down to communication with his partner and creating these authentic moments with Mags that show that they have been together for 10 years and they have this multi-layered relationship. So definitely bringing the authenticity to the dynamics of a long-standing relationship was probably the most challenging part of the role, but also the most exciting thing, to be able to play with Selena and talk to Dan about how we should navigate this space. And then obviously when other elements come into play, how they decide to manifest themselves.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, the biggest challenge and the biggest blessing is working together with your wife. And because this was the biggest film we've made together, biggest feature film we've made together. And so basically that drums up inherently insecurities in each other. And when you're not working with your partner, you keep those bottled up inside and you don't share those with anyone. But when your star is your wife, you share those things. And so that just drums up your insecurities and things. And so you have to work above that. But it's also the biggest blessing because I get to work with my wife and she's a genius and opposite from me in every single way, in a way that makes it possible that we've gotten to this point. So
yeah, and I will agree with what he said. And I think that the other thing that was, I think, really challenging but also incredible was how much of ourselves we put into these characters. So that in itself was its own therapy session, you know, because we were tackling flaws that we genuinely have. Granted, these characters are not us, but they're pieces of us. And so we're examining ourselves in a way that is very vulnerable and sometimes uncomfortable. And we're kind of tackling it with each other, like, well, you're kind of like this. And it's like, well, what do you mean? I'm not like that. And then, you know, but it's kind of like an interesting thing that you do this thing all the time. Should we put that in there? And it's like, what do you mean? I don't do that thing all the time. But the point is, though, that by having those conversations, we were really able to like kind of tap into ourselves. And I think there was so much growth and self-awareness that came from doing this project together.
Very nice. And I know these characters are based on you two, but I want Ritesh to know, playing Ash, tell me a little bit. Which characteristics of his do you wish you had, and in what ways do you relate to Ash?
Characteristics that I wish I had from Ash. You know, I think by the time we get to the end of the movie, there's an acceptance and there's a softness that I really respect from him. You know, to be able to accept the fact that he is not living up to his perhaps his potential, or what he believes that is his potential, or what he believes that Mags actually believes in him. You know, I think there's a self-reflection there that he is hard on himself to a certain extent because he's failing his family. He believes he's failing his family, but throughout the entire experience, I don't think there's a moment where Mags doesn't give him support. And I think it's sort of the realization of that's sort of the last conversation of the movie where they sort of confront each other. So if I had to pull one thing away from him, I think it would be that sort of that acceptance, that softness. And in terms of similarities, I mean, I don't want to say there's a lot, but sometimes there's a lot. You know, I think communication sometimes can be aloof for me, is difficult. But you know, more importantly, I think it's understanding. It's growth. It's the growth pattern. So, you know, no matter what, tomorrow is always a new day, and you can always learn more about yourself and your partner and your family and your children. And I think just having those open eyes is what allows people to grow and evolve.
What about you, Celine? I know it was basically based on you, right? Your character?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, you know, it's not me, but
Yes.
yeah, it's taken from all my parts.
Nice. And I want to know, what was that like, based on your parts? Is that more challenging for you to play a role like that? Or is it more easier for you to play a role like that where it's based on your story?
I mean, it was just a total dream come true, right? Because I wrote something that really matters to me. And it's not just about a threesome. It's about the dynamics of long-term relationships. It's about how we stop showing up for each other sometimes. It's about how we start taking each other for granted. It's about how we stop being curious about each other, how we make assumptions about each other, and we stop checking in. And so all of those things are just like so important to me, and so much of what like I care to say. And we really also tapped into this wife who's a primary breadwinner in the dynamic of her relationship, which is something that we have gone through in our own dynamics at certain moments, which is tough, but it's also something that is becoming more common as there's more working women who are killing it. And there's a dynamic there in a relationship that needs to be explored. And I just think that it was like such a dream to be able to portray, and it was an exaggerated version of myself, but just like such an honest character that I could relate to so deeply, because I felt like it made everything so easy and natural. And it was so easy to tap into what my character was feeling and thinking, because I know her so well.
I like that. Well, we are almost out of time. I want to tell you guys how proud I am of you. You're absolutely amazing. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
Yay,
Thank you
thank
so
you so
much.
much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.